All right, we ready? I hope we're ready. I'm ready. It's time for a little Toastmaster time. Let's kill the music. Let's remove the tomato. Bam, no more music, and we are good to go here. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is February 23rd. I need to look at this thing, right? It's February 23rd, 2023. So it's 223, 2023, or 223, 23. Go figure out the date on that one. Fantastic. Is it not? It's time to talk. It's time to talk. Are you ready to talk? How do you in the world prepare to talk? Drink a little water. Iced tea. I want to tell you the truth. That was iced tea. Cold, good, nice and good. Gotta wet your lips before you speak, right? Yeah, sometimes you do. Gotta drink a lot of water before you speak. This way you don't get dried out. Well, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't want to get carried away on that one, do you? How do you know? How do you know how much water to drink, not to drink? What if you got to give a long speech? You don't want to run out in the middle and say, hey, gotta, gotta run out, gotta bathroom. That's not good. How do you do all these things? You learn. You learn. I learned about water the wrong way. Yeah, it was a mistake. It was not at a Toastmaster meeting. No, 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 no. It was up in college. Crazy stuff. So I was, fine or comfortable or wanting to speak in front of a crowd of people. I was a dorm vice president and I did a bunch of things over there with them. We had game show nights and things like that. That was a lot of fun. Dorm feud, and not dorm feud, a corridor feud. One inside the dorm, the different corridors. So we had one corridor, one floor, competing against another. It was a lot of fun. But then the school had a talent show. I was like, oh my gosh, a talent show. That's great. That's great. Somehow, and I don't remember how that happened, but I actually emceed the darn thing. So I was nervous. I've never done that before. And it seemed like the whole world was there. I don't think it was the whole world, but it was definitely a couple hundred people. It was a big auditorium. Yeah, it was a big auditorium that we were doing it at. It was full, as far as I could see. It was full, a couple hundred people, maybe 1,000 people. I don't even know. Don't know. You know why I don't know? Because I was backstage. I was backstage. I was guzzling down water because I didn't want to get dried out and that kind of thing. And let me tell you something. When I hit the stage on that one, and I came jumping out, and I was super excited, very stoked. I was pumped. I was ready to go. But I had all that water bouncing around in my stomach. I was like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. That was terrible. So I learned. That whole story, what happened here is I learned. I learned about how much or whether or not I should drink beforehand and whether or not I should eat beforehand before giving a speech. And forget about the 5-minute speeches. It really doesn't make too much of a difference. But if you're talking for a longer period of time, if you're looking for a half hour, for 45 minutes, for an hour, all these things become very, very important. Why don't you want to drink a lot? Well, again, you don't want to go say, hey, well, I'm glad you enjoyed the first 15 minutes, but I got to go run. That's not really it. And what if you are bouncing all around? You don't want it sitting in your stomach, especially food. Food is a big one, too. Hey, our bodies are designed to digest food, right? That makes sense. I don't have to be a nutritionist to figure that out. But if your body's working on the food and you want your body to work on your mind, this way you can stay focused on what you're doing and focused on the audience, well, don't. And then that's also, you don't want to feel blowy. You don't want to feel heavy, nothing. You want to feel alive. So don't overeat. Don't overdrink beforehand. Best place to learn these things? Not in front of 600 people, I can tell you that. But what about this place? That's right. Toastmasters International. What an interesting concept that is. And wouldn't you know it, tonight's Stony Brook Speech Wolves is proud to offer to you an open house meeting. What can you expect at this open house meeting? Well, some guy you might know going to give some sort of a speech tonight. And we have somebody who's a Toastmaster and somebody who's a timer and all kinds of other things. What in the world are these roles? Well, that's what I want to talk to you about today. Right? What are these roles? Why does Toastmasters make sense if you want to become a speaker and not a professional speaker? That doesn't really matter. But maybe you want to speak in front of a networking group. What if you want to speak in front of your employees? What if you want to be a better communicator and listener if you're in sales? There's a whole bunch of different ways that we communicate, whether it be in person, online, with one person or 100 people, whether or not you're practicing, or think about practicing, whether you're not, you need your listening skills. And if you're a good salesperson, you know you need good listening skills because you want to find out what the issue is. What issue are they having? Let them talk. But that also means sometimes you have to ask very good questions in order to get to that point where you could find out what is really going on. Same thing holds true with an audience. When you're up there speaking and you're giving a half hour, 45-minute presentation, don't you really want to know whether or not the audience is paying attention to you or not? And you can't ask them, hey, I have a question for you. Are you listening? Do you hear what I'm saying? I mean, really? You can't do that. You also can't ask a live audience or even afterwards and say, hey, how did I do? Really? You're up there for a reason because you are sharing your expertise in something. You're not asking, how did I do? How can I follow up? That's a good question. How did I do? No, 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 no. Inside the Toastmaster world, it's a normal course of business for you to find out how you did. So here we go. Let's go through a couple of these things. Uh, I just look at 8-minute intro. That was a little long. So we're going to shorten that one up on a going forward basis. We always are looking to learn, always looking to get better at what it is that we do. That is absolutely the case. Sorry, so what happens at a Toastmaster meeting? General meeting. Tonight, we're going to shorten it up a little bit. So it's at 5:30 this evening. We are at Stony Brook University. Again, I'll put the link up on that one, but you could always look up Stony Brook Speech Wolves. In fact, I'll do this right now. This way we have it, and it's done. But it's Stony Brook Speech Wolves. We're 5:30 p.m., and we are on the campus of Stony Brook University. The members of our club, just to go real specific there while I post this up, is varied. We are absolutely a varied club when it comes to the folks that are, Mike, good afternoon, that are participating in this one. Paste. Good, good, good. There we go. Okay. So we're a community club, the club. We're a community club. There's either community club, an advanced club, or a corporate club or closed club. So community club, that means everybody's invited. Anybody could go, anybody could join, all the rest of that stuff. We do vote our new members in for a reason. This way we could vote you out. And, if you're very disruptive or the language is always inappropriate and the rest of that stuff, or if it's all about you, if you're egotistical in a matter where you're not participating in the club, and I'll explain why that is, we need to be able to vote you out. So we vote you in. That's reality. All right. If the closed clubs, generally these are corporate clubs. XYZ Corporation wants to start a club. XYZ Club then sets the criteria for that club. Many times you have to be an employee of XYZ. That's it. That's a closed club. They can set that kind of criteria. And the other one is an advanced club. And the advanced clubs also can set criteria for themselves. I was a member, actually, I was a president of an advanced club. And the criteria we had on that one was that one, you had to be a member of another club. Why? Because we didn't want to be seen as poaching, as taking members from other clubs just to join ours. You had to remain a member of the other club, flat out. You had to be an officer, and you had to have completed a certain level of competent communicator, is what it's called, which means you had to give 10 speeches. The idea there was that we wanted to have more experienced Toastmasters there. We wanted to be able to share information and give feedback that was specific. Let's get into this thing as to what happens. And we'll stay on that topic of specific information. So, Toastmasters, what happens? One is that you follow this pathway, and depending upon what you want to accomplish, which one makes the most amount of sense for you. Some of the pathways, learning criteria, call them classes, if you will. One of them has to do with giving humorous speeches. Another one has to do with giving technical presentations. Another one has to do with leadership skills. Another one would have to do with using visual aids. Depending upon why you're there, what is appropriate to you. I'm not going to go through each one of them right now because that'll take up way too much time. But you're going to pick a path, a learning criteria for yourself that makes the most amount of sense for you. Easy enough to figure that out. You can speak to somebody that's there. Also, on the website for Toastmasters International, there's a questionnaire that you would complete, and that will guide you into one of these paths, one of these learning paths for yourself. So it is more apt to meet your needs. So now you're going to give a speech. It would be a prepared speech. Most of the prepared speeches range in time from 5 to 7 minutes. That's the window of time that you're looking to speak. At 5 minutes, we have a green light or a green car that would come up. Or if it's online, it's a green background that shows up. And that tells you that you've met the 5 minute minimum amount of time that you are to be using. 6 minutes is a warning sign that you only have a minute left. And then 7 minutes, it turns red. And that red light tells you that you've met your length of time and that you should wrap up the speech. And you give it another 30 seconds to wrap up the speech. If you go over, it doesn't matter in the club. It doesn't matter in the club, but the idea there is that you get a better sense of timing. Where does that matter? You want to become a professional speaker? You're given 7 minutes to give a speech, 15 minutes to give a speech, 30 minutes to give a speech. You are not to go over that 30 minutes. You go over 30 minutes when you are told you have 30 minutes at a professional present speech, at a professional organization, a trade shows that you're speaking at, they'll never invite you back. Flat out, won't invite you back. You got to have a sense of time. Even doing this podcast, right? Aiming for a 30-minute end, boom, got to have a sense of time. Also means that on these little tidbits of information, I need to have a sense of time. As I just mentioned in the beginning, 8 minutes is an intro, way too long. Should have been a lot shorter than that. Maybe 5 minutes because I told a story in there, that kind of thing. So you're giving a speech. You give a speech 5 to 7 minutes. That's good. You pick the pathway about becoming a motivational speaker. So you're trying to convince the audience of something. Can be anything. Totally up to you. Needs to be appropriate. There are certain topics at different clubs that they tell you are not to speak about. You could figure out, but some of them are. But that's where that goes. You give your speech 5 to 7 minutes. At another point in the meeting, another role would be the evaluator. And this is the reality side of it, because if you're giving a speech in public, you can't have somebody evaluate your speech and come up to you afterwards and grab the microphone and say, Brian, we really appreciate it. You gave that speech, and here's what you could do better. If you're sharing your expertise, you don't want to hear that, or you don't want to hear that in that environment. But also, if they critique or evaluate your speech in front of everybody else, that lessens the impact that you would have on that audience. Toastmasters, absolutely not. Here's what happens. An evaluator will come up. They have 2 to 3 minutes. Yes, everything is timed. 2 to 3 minutes to give you feedback on what you did. And I mean in total, what you did. The role is not to regurgitate what you said, but to talk about the effectiveness of what you said. Did that evaluator feel that what you said was understood by that audience? If you're giving technical presentations, your audience has to understand what it is that you're talking about. All right. If you're a scientist and you want to explain what a quark is, we actually had somebody do that, and nobody in the audience understands or is involved in science, you have to explain that in real terms, in understandable terms. If you're speaking to a group of scientists, it's a little bit different. We were not. Business group, you're speaking in a business group, business topic, it's a different kind of audience, but you need to understand that. Body language. Did you use the stage? Are you dressed appropriate? Vocal variety. Did you speak monotone or did you just go soft every once in a while? Maybe talk a little bit louder to make a point. And there's that kind of thing. So your prepared speeches are generally 5 to 7 minutes. You're preparing them. In other words, you have plenty of time. You have a week, 2 weeks in advance, whatever. It's up to you as to how frequently you want to speak. And then you would put your name on a roster for the day, and we would know that you want to speak. The evaluator, same thing. You would know that you're going to evaluate, but you can't really prepare that, can you? Because you can't come up with your opinions until you hear the speech. So your 5 to 7 minute speaker is a prepared speech. Your evaluator is an unprepared speech. Much more interesting to do. Also, much more challenging to do for many people because you want to give feedback to the speaker that's good. You want to give feedback to the speaker that is giving them areas of improvement, and you need to be encouraging. You need to be encouraging on it. Now, here's the difference between a community club evaluation and the advanced club evaluation. So, in a community club, know your audience. Many of the people that show up at a community club, our club, are brand new, never spoke before. Maybe they're very cautious about speaking, or they want to not just become a better speaker, they just want to have the confidence to speak. So if somebody gives an evaluation that is really nitpicking in that club, that might not fly terribly well with the audience members, not the speaker, but the audience members, because nobody wants to be ripped apart, and it wouldn't be ripped apart, but it might be perceived as that. Oh my gosh, I don't want to hear that about me. I'm afraid to just stand up there. I start sweating and things like that. My face turns red. It's, oh my, I'm so nervous. There's no way I want to hear somebody tell me that I'm a terrible speaker. So when you're giving an evaluation in a community club, it's a softer evaluation from the public standpoint. Absolutely, you have a private conversation and there's written comments that come back, and that can be very specific for the evaluator to the speaker, depending upon the speaker. In an advanced club, where the difference was there is the fact that everybody in there has been a member of Toastmasters for a while, so they understand what evaluations are. So when we had that advanced club, the idea there was that I was able to get feedback that was nitpicky. I wanted somebody to really take a look at what I was saying, my use of the stage, my use of vocal variety, body language, connecting with the audience, clarity, all the rest of that stuff. Because I knew in order for me to become a better speaker, I really wanted to get that kind of feedback. So I'm very open to it. In that environment was good. Same feedback in that environment in an advanced club versus that same feedback in a community club. I wanted to get that feedback, but from a club standpoint, you wanted to be cautious of it. So there's that. That's the difference between those two clubs. The other roles, timer, as I mentioned, speech is 5 to 7 minutes, or evaluation is 2 to 3 minutes. Somebody times it. That's what they do. They got cards, green, yellow, red, for 2 to 3 minutes. The green comes on at 2 minutes, and 5 to 7 minutes, the green comes on in 5 minutes. That's what the role is. Is that a speaking role, you ask? All right, you didn't ask. That's a rhetorical question. Is that a speaking role? The answer is yes. Yes. You got to write down how much time it took. Brian spoke for 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Bob spoke for 5 minutes and 11 seconds in his speech. At the end of the meeting, that person will give a report. They will stand up, or on Zoom, whatever. They will give their report that Brian spoke for X amount of time, Bob spoke for X amount of time, Barry spoke for X amount of time. Is that a speech? It's not exactly a terribly difficult speech to give, because you're just sharing the information that you have over there. But for many folks, or someone who's brand new, that might really count. That might really be a speech. That might be a push of what they're comfortable doing. So it's an important thing to do. Prepared speeches, That's that pathway, that 5 to 7 minute speech. An unprepared speech is the evaluation that you're giving. Another way that we do the unprepared speeches, it's called table topics. Table topics is very much like current events that you would do. Remember back in elementary school, you got up there and you spoke to the class about what's going on. You picked some article in the paper, an actual newspaper, and spoke about it. Well, what table topics is you're asked a question and you respond to that question for 1 to 2 minutes on that one. It's a much shorter time. So somebody needs to be the table topics master. They come with they can do this a couple of different ways. So many come with prepared questions. They got 20 questions, right? They got the prepared questions, and then they can ask for volunteers or they can ask somebody to respond to a question. So I asked Mary, you're going to respond to this question. Mary gets asked the question. If you were going on vacation, where would you go, and incorporate the color blue into it? And then Mary will speak for 1 to 2 minutes about that. Unprepared speech because Mary has no idea what the question is until she's given the question. How important is that? Very. You've been to networking events, right? Right. You've met different fellow employees in hallways, corridors, lunchrooms, all the rest of that stuff. Maybe you ran across the owner of the company someplace and they ask you, how you doing? Do you want to give a 20-minute response on how you doing? No, you got to think about the environment on that one. You want to speak for 1 to 2 minutes, a very short period of time on that one, and spit out what you're doing. You need to be able to think on your feet at a networking event, at a corporate event, anything like that. Even you go to a picnic, somebody asks, hey, what's going on in your life? That's an unprepared speech. So table topics is given that unprepared speech. 1 to 2 minutes. That means you're practicing time. You're gonna have the time embedded in your head what 1 to 2 minutes is. And you are going to be able to do something which is really, really important is as you get better with that, you'll be able to think and speak at the same time. And oh, is that incredibly important. Salespeople, what do you think about that one? Right? You ask a question, you get a response. Now it's time to respond to that. You're thinking and speaking at the same time. If you're going to host a podcast, radio show, TV show, anything like that, you absolutely need to do it. If you're doing video, you have a little bit more time when it comes to dead air, that quiet time. If you're doing radio, ooh, you have a little less time when it comes to that dead air space. So you need to be able to respond quickly to something to keep a conversation flowing. Super important. Unbelievably important if you're searching for a job and you're sitting there in an interview. Someone asks you a question. Tell me about your job skills. Well, one, you really should have that answer prepared because that's an obvious one. But if you have to sit there and think for 5 to 10 seconds about what your job skills are, why? That should roll right off the tip of your tongue. As many other questions that might be asked over there. It needs to be done that way. Very applicable if you're having one-on-one conversations with people. So that table topics, I think, is just absolutely terrific. Now, how does a meeting actually happen? The meeting happens, thanks for the comments over there. The meeting happens by the Toastmaster of the day. Yes, the Toastmaster of the day. We could joke around, but say that the Toastmaster of the day is the ringmaster. Yes, the Toastmaster is the one that brings everybody up to the lectern or Zoom meeting, whatever, but keeps the meeting moving. They introduce the speakers. They let you know what's happening, and they give everybody a chance to really run. That person runs the meeting. That person runs the first half of the meeting, actually. Then there's a general evaluator. The general evaluator runs the second half of the meeting. And then also that general evaluator will do something that's really important to the Toastmaster of the day, and that is they'll give feedback on the overall meeting. Yes, that's right. We have evaluators for the speech, and we have a general evaluator that gives a report, an evaluation of the entire meeting. You also have other people that are participating in this meeting, and it varies from club to club on some of these things. Sometimes we would have a quiz master. The person would listen to all the speeches, and then they will ask questions at the end for everybody to respond to, quizzing us on what was said and what information was shared. Is that important? Is it fun? It definitely can be funny, without a doubt. But here's what happens there too: listening skills. That's right, listening skills. So, over the course of the meeting, and some of the meetings go for an hour, some for an hour and a half, depending upon the club, you're listening now because you know at the end of the meeting, somebody's going to be quizzing you. Important to have listening skills? Yeah, without a doubt. In a one on one situation, interview, sales, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're giving a speech to 100 people, is it important to have listening skills? Yeah, just as important. And some of those listening skills are actually done with your eyes because you're looking at body language. Oh, you do that at the meeting too, don't you? Absolutely. If you're giving a speech, a 5 to 7 minute speech, you're still giving a speech. You're still speaking to an audience. The question is the audience engaged or not? That's body language. They're not going to respond to your questions because most of these are going to be rhetorical questions. So that 10, 15, 20 people at your meeting is going to be the same kind of audience, we'll say, that it would be if you were speaking to 100 people or 500 people or 1,000 people. No response. But you want to look at is the body language. Are people leaning forward? Do they have eye contact with you, even online? Absolutely. You want to pay attention to those things. That's the stuff that actually happens at a meeting. It's an interesting dynamic, and it's all about feedback. It's all about becoming a better speaker by getting feedback and practicing different things. When I first joined, I was comfortable on stage. And I was so comfortable, I was not impactful. So I want to become more impactful in my presentations, not just comfortable. There are other people that want to get over the fear of speaking. They want to be able to get up in front of a room. That's a big deal. There are other people that get promoted at work. It's like, oh my, now I am now the sales manager, and now I have to speak to the folks that are reporting to me, and I have to do a meeting every so often. I need to be much more comfortable with that. In person, online, no matter what, no matter what. Students, who is going to be the person with the right answer? Well, you have to have the right answer for one. Two, you have to raise your hand. And those that are the most confident will probably raise their hand quicker. Think and speak at the same time, and think about the answer, raising the hand, and be ready to go. That's the person. Not a student, you're sitting in a boardroom, same thing. Same thing. You have to have the confidence to raise your hand. And Toastmasters gives you the confidence. Maybe not the right answer. That's yours. But it gives you the confidence to become a better communicator. And that's unbelievably important because you know what you need to do. You definitely need to do it. You need to speak well, speak often, and live inspired. Everybody will follow. Guaranteed on that one, man. They just want to be part of something good. And if your life is that something good that interests people, hey, that's a beautiful thing. That is absolutely a beautiful thing. All right. So tonight, 5:30 p.m. at Stony Brook University. If you can't make it or you had other questions, please direct message me. Call, whatever it is. We're good there. All right. I guess that's it, right? Yep. 30 minutes and a couple of seconds. So, as they say, I'll see you tonight. Have a good night.